Hari Om and greetings from Portland. When one travels through America, one comes to observe capitalism in an extreme way. Capitalism as a model is very simple. The more you work, the more you earn. Yes? This is a logical model, a logical societal ideology, but there's a deficiency with capitalism, and that is it encourages the short term. The more I work, the more I earn. It is a short-term way of living for me, and so a short-term way of living for all. If we take this to an environmental level, it would be one who lives by single use. Single-use toothbrush, single-use plastic, single-use water bottle, single-use whatever it may be. Single-use is short-term. What is short-term? I'm going to do this now because it's easier for me. When we think of Prthvi Sevasanga, we do think about so much of what we're doing, but I also want you to understand the foundation for this community. It is training in the long term. To think long term, to speak long term. Just think about speaking. I had shared with all of you, I'm speaking informally, but now I'm speaking formally. And so when the video is shared, all of the informal thoughts I shared will not be relevant 12 months from now. Correct? You can't be part of the Prithvi Utsava 12 months from now. So to think long term, even with your words, and most of all, to live by the long term with your actions. The way your profession functions, the way your family travels, the way you collect. Our Prithvi Sevasanga is a smaller group of people who have big hearts that are hoping to radiate this shift from the short term to the long term. And we have been doing this well. Challenge after challenge, workshop after workshop, day after day. How many of you feel better? How many of you feel more faithful about your relationship with your Mother Earth? I always felt that recycling was not enough, but I didn't know what to do. And through the Prithvi Sevasanga, now I know what to do, and I'm trying to follow through with that. This is not just a societal measure, this is a self-development measure. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As we remember our veterans, as we remember our families during the spiritual parenting retreat, we also remember it's because of our Mother Earth that we have families, that we have veterans. So this Memorial Day, we can remember your Mother Earth. And you are. Keep being inspired and re-inspiring yourself. Our team.
Thank you, Vivekji. Hari Om. Hari Om, everyone. Thank you for being with us this evening. I am happy to give our introduction to our special speaker today, Seema. She has been very active in the environmental space, both individually and at an advocacy level. Seema started her own environmental group in her local community and created a lot of environmental awareness on the issue of food waste and single use plastics. She was able to rally the community to advocate for a curbside food scrap program and has started local programs within the school district to reduce food and plastic waste. Also, as a grassroots organizer, SEMA has taken an active role in a coalition for plastic reduction at the state level, where she's written bills and defended those bills in front of the state government. Recently, I was able to attend state lobby day with her as well. So, Seema, welcome and thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you, Rita ji. I'm very humbled to be here today to be speaking with you. Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, good. So before I start the discussion today about plastics, I just wanted to anchor our talk with how the narratives on plastics is changing. So when a lot of us think about plastic, we think about the waste that's on our streets. We think about the plastic waste that's in our oceans, of the animals with their bellies full of plastics. And while all of that is very true and highly disturbing, the plastic crisis is also, when you look at the whole life cycle, it's also contributing to climate change. It's a huge environmental justice issue, and it's a public health concern as well. And I will speak to that now. Let me just share mine. Can you see the presentation? Okay. So, a world today without plastics really seems unimaginable. But I think what we all need to remember is that plastic production dates back only to the 1900s. It's a very new material that has been introduced into our lives. And in this very, very short period of time, we have reached an unsustainable pattern of consumption. So global plastic production has increased 20-fold since the 1960s. So from 15 million tons to now 300 million tons. And what's actually really surprising when I heard this was that nearly half of the plastic that has been manufactured to date has been just in the last 20 years, so since 2000. Now, plastic is used for a lot of things, but what it's used a lot for, over 40% of yearly plastic production, is for items that we use just for a few minutes and throw away. So that's like your plastic water bottles, your plastic cutlery, plastic bags, and a lot of the food packaging that our food and grocery stores come in. Now, every piece of plastic, it starts out as a fossil fuel and it emits greenhouse gases at every stage of its life cycle. So from extraction to production to disposal, greenhouse gases are emitted throughout the plastic life cycle. And if we continue producing plastic at the rate that we're producing it today, it will threaten our ability to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. In fact, a few years ago, Al Gore said that the oil and gas companies are looking to plastics to make up for the loss in demand as the world is shifting to renewables. So if we do not control that, we're going to have a huge issue in terms of keeping our global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, the other issue with plastics, and this is a really sad one, is that most of the plastic production, incineration, disposable facilities are located in low-income communities and communities of color. There's actually an 85-mile stretch in Louisiana along the Mississippi River. It's called Cancer Alley. There are about 150 oil refineries and petrochemical plants in this 85-mile long stretch. And people in this area are 50 times more likely to get cancer than an average American. So making plastic production a huge environmental justice issue. Now, a lot of the plastic, unfortunately, plastic waste from developed countries is exported to countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, that do not have a strong waste management and infrastructure system. This is actually referred to a lot of people as waste colonization. So when the plastic waste reaches these countries, it's either burned, but a lot of it ends up on their landscape. And then it ends up into the rivers and finally ending up into the ocean. So worldwide today, about 8 to 15 million tons of plastics enter our oceans every year. Now, a lot of animals, they confuse the plastic for food, and some of them die of starvation with their bellies full of plastic. It's estimated that if we continue producing plastic and disposing the way we do today, that by 2050, there'll be more plastic by weight than fish in the ocean. So unfortunately, when plastic reaches the ocean, it does not biodegrade. So it does not break down, but it breaks up. So the sunlight makes it brittle. The ocean wave action starts to degrade the plastic. Then it breaks down into tiny, tiny pieces, which are called microplastics. Today, microplastics can be found in almost everything, from our drinking water to our soil, table salt. They have even found microplastics at the peak of Mount Everest and deep under the ocean in the Mariana Trench. So here I have two pictures for you, which are highly disturbing. So on the left-hand side, we see a microplastic filament. So what a microplastic filament is, basically, it is the microfibers that release from our plastic clothing. So a lot of the polyester clothing is plastic. So this has been taken up, and you can see the microplastic filament in a snowflake. So basically, it's taken up, and then when the snow falls, it's actually falling down with the snow. On the right-hand side, what we see is a nanoplastic. So what nanoplastics are they're much smaller than microplastic. They're not visible to the naked eye. And this has actually been taken up by plants. And research has shown that plants that are choked up with a lot of microplastics, their crop yield is very low. So unfortunately, researchers have found microplastics in the human body as well. So there've been studies coming out since 2019 showing microplastics in different parts of the body. So in 2021, just 4% of the human placenta was studied, and they found microplastics both on the maternal side as well as the fetal side. In another study, they found microplastics in the human blood, and this was in 80% of the sample tested. And their concern with finding microplastics in the blood is that it can lodge itself in any part of the organ once it's in our blood. And another study found microplastics and in the lung, but was surprising to researchers in this study was it was found deep in the lung, where a lot of particles do not get easily to that area of the lung. So a study estimates that an average person could be ingesting a credit card worth of plastic every single week. So now, why is this a problem? Why are we concerned about microplastics in our body? So when plastics are made, there are thousands of chemical additives that are put into plastics to give them their color, to give them their flexibility, to make them more stable. Unfortunately, a lot of these plastics like phthalates, PFAS, they are known endocrine disruptors. So they're called EDCs, or endocrine disrupting chemicals. And essentially what EDCs are, they mimic the hormones in our body. So essentially they behave like the hormones in our body and they throw things off balance. So EDCs can lead to a number of diseases, such as ADHD, low IQ, obesity, diabetes, and even cancers such as breast cancer and prostate cancer, which we all know are on the rise right now. So, coming to solutions to the plastic crisis, and well, first I'll talk about what is not a solution. So, for the past 50 years, the plastic industry has been pushing recycling as a way to deal with the plastic waste problem. They have known since the 1980s, there was an NPR investigative reporting that came out a few years ago, and they found that the oil and gas executives knew that we will not be able to recycle plastics because they're hard to recycle, and I'll talk about that in a second. So to date, only 9% of global plastic waste has been recycled. So just think about it. Of all the plastic waste that we've been produced to date, we've been able to recycle only 9% of that globally. 12% has been incinerated, and about 79% of it is in our natural environment. So the reason why plastic hasn't worked is first, there isn't a market for recycled plastic because virgin plastic is cheaper. The economics don't exist for recycled plastic, unfortunately. Secondly, there's plastic packaging that is made up of different types of resins. That's your like plastic 1, plastic 2. So when plastic packaging is made up of different resins, it's very hard to break it down and then recycle each one of those separately. The third one, and actually this one is probably, I think, one of the hugest issue is plastic can be recycled only 2 to 3 times, and then it has to be landfilled. And when it is recycled, it's actually downcycled. So it's made into something inferior. So it's made into like a plastic bed, it's made into a bench, or it's made into our synthetic clothing. And the last one is that, recycling doesn't solve the upstream issues with plastic production, the environmental justice issues, as well as the health impact from using plastics with our food and our beverages. So what's the solution? We talked about single-use plastics early on, that over 40% of yearly plastic production is for single-use items, and this is something that we have very recently become reliant on. So our solution is to reduce our reliance on single-use plastics, and secondly is to move towards some of the older ways of how we did things and to shift towards a reuse economy. And I'll talk about what a reuse economy will look like. But both of these changes need to happen not just at a personal level, where we change our personal habits in terms of the plastics that we buy, but we need to make community level changes as well. The reason, I'm going to talk about community level changes first. And the reason why I would like to do this is because the problem is so huge that we need to start making changes at a larger scale. I don't know if some of you remember, but last year I spoke about the issue of food waste. And the researchers came out and said that in order to tackle the global warming problem, reducing food waste in our homes was like the top third solution out of 100 solutions. So making changes to reducing food waste can make a huge impact in our homes. But when we look at the plastic crisis, the problem is so huge that we really need to make large scale changes in order to make a difference. So first I'll talk about some of the policy initiatives where we can make a difference. So the first strategy in terms of policy is is reducing or restricting problematic single-use plastics. So what do we mean by problematic plastics? So this is like your polystyrene foam, your plastic bags, your plastic cutlery. They're not accepted in your curbside recycling bin because they're not able to be managed by the machinery. And so these items usually end up as litter in our environment. In fact, there have been a lot of municipalities that have tried to recycle styrofoam or polystyrene foam, and they haven't been able to do so because the economics don't exist for it. And as far as plastic bags are concerned, I don't know how many of you saw this, but just a couple of days ago, there was an investigation done by ABC News. They put 46 trackers in plastic bags that are dropped at Walmart and Target for recycling. When I say recycling, they take these bags and they make like benches out of them, etc. So out of the 46 trackers, only 3 of them made it to a place that would recycle the plastic bags. The rest of them made it either to an incineration facility or were being landfilled. So these are problematic plastics, and the approach has been to try to ban these plastics. So there are 9 states that have banned polystyrene foam, and there are 200 local municipalities in the US that have banned styrofoam. As far as plastic bags are concerned, 6 states have banned them, and then other cities have put a fee or a tax on plastic bags in order to reduce their consumption. In fact, recently New Jersey passed a ban on both single-use plastic bags and paper bags. Another policy to reduce single-use plastics is called Skip the Stuff. So every year, there's billions of straws, utensils, condiment packets that are handed to people for takeout orders, for delivery orders. So Skip the Stuff is a national campaign, which is a law where restaurants will not give customers these accessories unless the customers ask or request for them. The law also includes this restriction for the apps, the delivery apps like DoorDash and Uber Eats, etc. So the customer would have to ask for each one of these in the apps to be able to get them. There are 56 Skip the Stuff type of laws that have been enacted in local jurisdictions here in the US, and there are 2 states that have been able to do that. Now, this is one that I really like. In 2019, Berkeley, California, they passed legislation that mandates reusable foodware on-site dining. So this is all your restaurants and your cafes have to serve customers on reusable foodware. That includes McDonald's as well. This is something that has started to gain momentum. There are 12 cities in the US that have this in a few countries as well. So there are other policies that are trying to change the way producers make the packaging of foods and beverages. So there are 2 types of laws. One is called extended producer type responsibility, and the other one is a deposit return system. Essentially, what's important about these laws is it's shifting the responsibility of the collection and financing of the waste and recycling away from the local municipalities and from the residents, and it's shifting the responsibilities to the producers. And what's really great, especially about the EPR law, is that producers of packaging that are not recyclable, that are not compostable or not usable, they have to pay more into the system than producers that have sustainable foodware packaging. And what that does is that then changes what producers do in terms of the kinds of packaging that they use for different products. So there are 10 states right now with a deposit return system. And a deposit return system is a bottle bill, which I think some people might be aware. You buy your beverage containers, you pay a deposit for it, and then when you're done using it, you take it back to the retail store and you get your deposit back. The good thing about this system is that people, because of the deposit, they bring their beverage containers back, they get recycled, um, and then in a lot of places, they're even reused again. Ritaji, how am I doing on time?
You're doing fine.
Okay.
You did good.
Now, it's not always possible for everyone to work on policy level changes. So there's a lot of things that we can do from a non-policy perspective that can make a big difference. So the first thing I want to talk about is, there's everyday meals served in schools, in universities, in mandirs, in our office places, on single-use styrofoam, on single-use compostable way with plastic utensils. In fact, in the US, the schools serve about 5 billion meals per year. So can you imagine if we were able to shift just our schools to reusable, the kind of impact that we would be able to make? The advice I would have here when working with schools is leverage your contacts. Talk to other parents. Talk to the staff if you know. Educate them on the health concerns with using plastic foodware. I think when it comes to schools, when it comes to parents, a lot of parents would worry about their children eating on plastic with chemicals that are leaching into their food. Start a team with key stakeholders. So get your principal, your cafeteria staff, your custodian in the school involved. Set a team up of all of the people that would be responsible for making the change. And the last thing I'll say here is maybe start small. So sometimes the school is not ready for such a big change to be able to change all of their foodware from single use to reusable. They could have many concerns like they may not have dishwashing capability or they may not have the labor to do it. So start small, maybe change one or two items. What we did in our school district was we worked actually with our Girl Scouts team, and we had them watch a movie from Cafeteria Culture. And the name of the movie is called Microplastic Madness. I would highly suggest that people watch this movie. It's about these middle school children that did an audit of the single-use plastics in their school, and they went about then giving a recommendation to the principal on how to shift from single-use plastics to reusable. And they were involved also in bringing about legislation to ban certain single-use plastics in their local district. So we worked with our Girl Scout troop. They watched the movie and they ended up creating their own video to educate their peers. So you can start small. You don't have to conquer the whole thing in one go. The other thing I would recommend also, that resources are available to help. There are schools out in the West Coast and around the country that have started to move to reusables. So I would say, reach out, find out what other schools are doing, learn from other schools. That's the best way. And at the end of the presentation, I have a bunch of resources that we will share with everybody. Reuse at farmers markets. So this is something actually that Rita J has done with her the farmers market in her community. Rita Ji, would you like to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. So what we've done is we have a an immigrant refugee welcome center in our community, and they have a sewing center where they get materials that are donated. All of their materials are donated. So the women there, they gather, they learn sewing skills, they socialize, they practice speaking English. And then the remnants of their fabrics, they've turned into not plastic, sorry, cloth bags. And so we collaborated with them, and they created these produce bags that we then handed out at the farmers market and asked the vendors, especially the produce vendors, because we get people use those plastic bags for their produce. And so they also handed it out to the customers. So, and we didn't ask for any type of compensation, but several people did donate, which will go back to the sewing center.
Yeah, I love this initiative. We're trying to mimic that at here as well in Vernon Hills. We're working with our community center to do a workshop on how to make produce bags. And one of the ideas that our team member came up with is maybe we show a 10-minute video on what are the issues with using single-use produce bags, and then have people sew their own. So I love this idea, Rita G. Thank you. The next initiative I would say is, it's called Bring Your Own, BYO. And what this does is it encourages customers to bring their own containers to be filled at restaurants and cafes. And what the restaurants do is they put a visible signage at their doors to alert the customers that their containers will be accepted. So this is huge, I think, in terms of moving to reusables. If we as customers are able to take in our own containers, especially for like takeout food, I think this would be huge in terms of getting rid of some of the single-use plastics when it comes to takeout. There are about 11 bring your own groups that are part of the movement right now here in the US. And in fact, this movement was borrowed from Canada. So this started out in Canada first, and now it's started to take a hold here in the US as well. The next thing I'd say is that, as I said before, we don't need policy to be able to make a change. So any one of us can go to our local restaurant or cafe and talk to them about doing reusables for on-site dining, or telling them not to give the accessories, which is a plastic utensils and the condiment packets in the takeout delivery. There are reports and resources available that are made specifically for restaurants and cafes to tell them about the savings from moving to reusables. I mean, just this particular chart itself, it says that using 500 paper cups consumes 370 gallons of water, but using and washing one ceramic cup uses 500 times. Washing it 500 times consumes only 53 gallons of water. Like this, there are a number of charts even talking about the savings that the restaurants would achieve by moving to reusables. And these reports not only talk about like economic savings, but they talk about the material type. If you're moving, from a single-use plastic to a ceramic or to a glass or to a stainless steel, what types of savings you can get. So this is, this is huge in this area to be able to convince local restaurants and cafes. Now, this is what I was talking about initially about moving to a reuse economy. There are a lot of reuse service providers that have started to pop up around the country. This is an example of one that's called Forever Wear. So they provide reusable takeout containers and cups. So a customer goes in, they get their order in the reusable container or the cup, they pay a deposit for it, and then when they're done, they come back a few days later, they return it, and they get their deposit back. Now, these types of systems are popping up a lot around the country, and I would actually, Reggie, do I have a minute to show the video on this?
Yeah, we would need to start the breakout groups shortly. Like if it's just a minute, we should.
No, you know what? So maybe I can show it later. Let me go through. I have some of the personal. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, we can share this link also
at
the end.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so how do you get started? a lot of what I spoke about can feel a little bit daunting, um, especially like working on the policy level stuff. So you can start by finding out if you have a plastics team in your community. Is there someone working? Is there a League of Women Voters that's working on plastics? Is there Sierra Club working on plastics? Or you start your own team. So what? Um, so as Rita ji said, I'm I started Go Green Burn Hills in Lincolnshire in 2019, and when I started working on the plastics issue, I was looking for other people to work with, and I learned about a coalition which is called the Coalition for Plastic Reduction here in Illinois. Our coalition is made up of 35 members, so we have um, the state and local chapters of League of Women Voters, Sierra Club. We have the Shed Aquarium, Alliance of the Great Lakes. So these are 35 member organizations that have come together to deal with the plastics issue. And I plugged in right into this coalition. And with that, then started the work on looking at different policies. So that's what Rita ji was talking about. We were able to get a ban on a polystyrene foam for state agencies here in Illinois. We weren't able to get a full statewide ban. It was just for the state facilities. But like that, we're working on other legislation as part of the coalition. Another example I give you is you can just start small. You can collect 2 or 3 people and start working on any of these different initiatives or programs that I've spoken about. The second advice I'll give you is connect with one of the national organizations like Beyond Plastics, Upstream, Break Free from Plastic. There are a number of national organizations that are working on the plastic issue. And the advantage on that is they have the knowledge of what's happening nationwide. In the cities, in the states. Not only that, they have knowledge of what's happening internationally as well. They will be able to connect you locally to other individuals so you can start your own team. That's how I got connected to the Coalition for Plastic Reduction. They have a suite of solutions for you to work on. So if there's something that, that is not working for you, they have other solutions that you can pick from. And one of the most important things is that they will give you access to resources and tools. So for example, they will have model legislation that has a bill on how to ban polystyrene foam or how to ban plastic bags. They have toolkits to run campaigns, how to talk to your legislators, how do you move schools from single use to reusables. They have research, they have data. And the last thing will say is also that they have a knowledge of what false solutions are. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is something that has started to crop up a lot. So you remember when I spoke to you about recycling not being the solution and that which has been pushed on consumers for the last 50 years? Well, now the plastics industry is coming up with what they're calling advanced recycling or chemical recycling. And basically, these are technologies that burn plastic to make low grade fuel, or they break plastic down into its basic components to create more plastic. The issue with this technology is they've been trying to do it for 30 years. They haven't been successful. These technologies result in a lot of energy and greenhouse gas emissions and a lot of chemical pollutants going into the environment as well. The other thing I'll say is I know a lot of people, this was surprising to me as well, that bioplastics and compostables are false solutions. They termed as false solutions, one, because again, it's single use. Secondly, the problem with compostables and bioplastics is in order for them to break down, they need to be taken to a large composting facility to break down. They are not breaking down um, in the regular environment or if they're landfilled. The third issue with bioplastics and compostables is the same type of chemical additives that are put in plastics are put in these as well. So like PFAS and things like that. So this is another place where you need to be careful that you're not moving to greenwashing or false solutions. I'll go through this very quickly. Changes in personal behavior. I think a lot of you are probably already doing some of this, but this is one that has really worked for us, is keeping a bag of reusables in your car. So this has got your pot shopping bags, your produce bags that Rita spoke about, um, for your produce, your coffee mug, um, and this tiffin, I'm sure most people recognize this. This is something my mother-in-law got for me, and this is something I keep in my car all the time. I don't take the black plastic containers for takeout. And then a reusable water bottle, always keep it on your counter when you leave, fill your water and take it with you. So this is, if you adopt this, you will reduce a lot of the single-use plastics that you bring home. Shop in the bulk aisle of a grocery store, take your own containers, try to look for alternatives like paper or glass. So this is glass water bottle, bar soap, bar shampoo, bamboo toothbrush, plastic-free floss, toothpaste tablets, body butter, deodorant in a glass, and refillable laundry tablets. With a lot of these, the good thing is they're refillable. So the milk bottle can be taken back and it's basically cleaned and refilled. The same with this body butter. It's bought at a farmer's market. You can take this glass back and it's refilled. Make things at home. I think a lot of people here probably already do that, but you can make a lot of things at home and get rid of the single-use plastics. Homemade deodorant, homemade pita chips, yogurt, bread. In fact, if there's one thing I would highly recommend is for you to do is to get Zero Waste Chef newsletter. She has everything under the sun in terms of how to reduce single-use plastics in your life. And that is it. Yesterday, are we going into breakout rooms?
Yeah, so we want to give them some guidance on what we're talking about in the breakout group. So what will pop up on the screen are choices for you to join a group, and you'll have 4 sort of categories, and you can choose what you are interested in. So we have listed about where you think you can make a change. So our aim for this past month was to kind of think about where plastic is unavoidable and places where you go where it feels like they're unavoidable. So and what we'd like you to just discuss is what might be ways that you can approach, who you can approach at these places, and what your ideas might be based on what Seemaji has shared. And the 4 choices are local schools, restaurants, temples, and then your workplace. So once that pops up, just choose which is of most interest and most relevant to you, and we'll probably have a little less than maybe about 8 minutes or so for you to discuss, and then we'll come back. So if anyone has questions, you can virtually raise your hand for Seemaji.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts today. Sometimes I find myself getting very anxious about plastic issue. So the resources you shared are creating a sense of hope. So appreciate that. So a question that I was thinking about is when we do large scale events, 700, 800, 900 people eating for a Diwali function, it gets significantly difficult to convince the team to use resources that are sustainable. So probably more education is needed, but any suggestions if you would have, that would be awesome.
I think with anything here, right? Schools, mandirs, anything. I think you have to do baby steps. So in the breakout room that I was in, where we were talking about temples, If someone had suggested that they were going to ask their mission to just bring maybe reusable water bottles, or you could ask people to just bring reusable cutleries. But when you're talking about 600, 700 people, that's a little bit hard. That's something you have to start planning well in advance. And I think it will take education. There are also, I give you a very small view of what a reuse economy is going to look like and what some of the reuse service providers are there. But there are service providers that are providing reusables for large events. So I will link those resources also on my presentation. And so they bring in the reusables, and then they take it and they're washed at their facilities. Of course, there's money involved here, so that you'll have to figure out how to pay for something like that. But that is something that is happening. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Okay, I think we will have to just do the formal ending, and then if anyone would like to stay back for more questions, we'll do that. So as Vivekji has shared, we have our Dedicating to Devi challenge as well as our Prithvi Utsava that's coming up on July 16th. So we'd love to have everyone here join us and for you to bring along as many people as you can. It's going to be an international celebration. We'll have speakers from outside of our community celebrating with us. So please save that date, July 16th. And then our Dedicating to Devi Challenge is ongoing. Registration is always open. If anyone has any questions about that, I'll put our email in the chat and you can email us with questions. And with that, we'll end with an Om. And if anyone would like to stay back, we can answer questions. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Thank you, everyone.